Welcome back. As we promised you, we're having quite the informative session that begins right now. We're talking about gender-based violence and now tracking the criminal justice system. To take us through this conversation is none other than MARION NJOROGE. He's a human rights activist and an executive director at MK Defenders. Thank you very much, ma'am, for making time. So this evening, we just began our bulletin with quite a harrowing tale of a man who is alleging that he was sodomized by a man of the cloth. It's a developing story. Investigations are underway. That points to the fact that we're talking about the increased cases of gender-based violence. Why are we not having the perpetrators behind this heinous act behind bars, as we should?
Thank you for having me. Greetings from the great people of Kiambu County. And it's very devastating that the people we entrust with our lives are the same people who are perpetrators of such heinous act. I've been following that story of that man of cloth who allegedly sodomized a young man. I've listened to the young man, and the story leaves us with a lot of questions. And there could have been omission in whatever the process that took place. And I was asking myself, was there the preservation of the swabs? Was the perpetrator subjected to forensic DNA or something? If we have omission on that, I think the young man might never arrive to justice. However, he still needs to pursue justice. This is among 100 or let's say 1,000 of silent cases of men who goes through sodomy and they keep silent. I want to applaud that young man because of having the courage to speak in public about the ordeal, and I really, really sympathize with him. Mm-hmm. Yes.
So now we have looked at, what you have done is that you've shown that the questions that have come to mind is if there was evidence and was it preserved for it to be viable, to be a crucial lead in the arrest, in the investigation. That points out to the question is, how many of the general public know the process? Once the unfortunate happens, what should one do?
One thing that you should do as a survivor of gender-based violence, whether it's rape, it's sodomy, or whatever sort of violence it is, you should never take a shower. Run to a hospital that has facilities that can take swabs. So many hospitals have really let our victims down. I have hospitals somewhere, I don't want to mention because of the legality of the issue, where a rape victim appears, they just give them the PEPs, the normal PEPs, and they leave. No swabs, no DNA, nothing. And when the police are trying to put the perpetrator to the scene of crime, or trying to prosecute the perpetrator leaves, escapes justice because of the negligence of our hospitals. It is not for it is very simple for us to know that we need the swabs to be taken, but where are they been taken from? And this is the challenge that we also put in the criminal justice system. I found policemen telling me, I've challenged them and tell them, why are you not taking a certain perpetrator to court? And they tell me, we cannot put the perpetrator to the scene of crime. Why? There's no DNA, there's no swabs, nothing forensic that can put the perpetrator at the center of this heinous act.
Mm-hmm. Now, NJOROGE, under the new healthcare, take for care, has this been looked into, especially in public hospitals? Because if condoms are indeed free in circulation, I know we have a challenge where sanitary towels are not, but then when we're looking at addressing this issue, has it been, addressed under the new healthcare procedure? Would you be in the know of it?
It could be there in books, it could be there in writing, but kwa ground mambo ni different.
All right.
Not many hospitals, not many public hospitals are using the survivor centered approach. The survivor-centered approach looks at the wish, the confidentiality, the respect, the non-discrimination of the survivors. And not many public hospitals, and especially in places like where I work from in Kiambu, not many hospitals are able to work on the survivors-based approach. Mm-hmm. And I think this is something that we also need to challenge as human rights defenders, because these cases are really increasing, and so many perpetrators are escaping justice. Because
so is it a lack of willingness or a lack of knowledge?
Lack of prioritization. Yeah.
So from lack of priority. It's not priority.
It is not a priority in so many of our hospitals. We have hospitals where the facelifting is very... There's a lot of facelifts, mm-hmm. There's a lot of renovations in our hospitals, but how about the survivors' facilities? They are not there.
So what I'm hearing with you, from you, NJOROGE, is that medical facilities are key in stemming gender-based violence because they're the custodians of this data.
Yes.
Is there any other way we can actually have it done, you know, in away from the hospitals? Or are they the only custodians that we can actually get this data from?
Our hospitals are a prop in the criminal justice system.
All right.
We can never have
we can never bypass them.
We can never bypass them. And that is the first stage in the criminal justice system. It is the doctor who examines the survivor. It's the doctor who treats. It's the doctor who takes the swabs and everything. It's the doctor who takes the DNA. So we can never bypass them. They are a very, very... They should be very, very instrumental in the criminal justice system. Now, when I have had some challenges, and especially, and some complaints even coming from the police officers who are very passionate in fighting GBV, and they tell me, you know what, I really wanted to move forward with this case, but there was omission in the first stage. Your survivor, they call them my survivor. Yeah. Your survivor went to the hospital, nothing was done. They just did the anti-HIV thing, and the counseling, and the patient and the survivor left. And so moving forward to court, it becomes very difficult, even for the police or the prosecution, to prove the case beyond reasonable doubts. Yes.
The reasonable doubt comes into question. Then how are we addressing this in terms of creating awareness? Because what would you advise on that point? On that, how do we create awareness?
Personally, I've been doing a project called in Kiambu County called Article 43. It's about teaching the members of the public on accessing sexual reproductive health rights in our hospitals, and I can tell we are really moving on well. Our women and girls are getting to learn the gains in the Constitution in terms of sexual reproductive health rights. We've worked with a hospital like Kihara. We've petitioned against some things that we thought they were bringing the omissions and everything. We've also had a case in Kiambu Hospital where a lady had a miscarriage. She went there, and she left there worse than she got into the hospital, and later on the case was referred to KNH. Yes. And so these are the things, even negligence with our medical personnel.
Negligence and omission is the main thing that I'm hearing.
Negligence and omission.
So how can we build capacity? Everyone is a potential. That's the truth.
Yes.
Everyone is a potential to gender-based violence. We need to accept that. Whoever we are, wherever we are potential victims. So today, Marion, how do we build capacity should the worst happen? Or even before it happens, how can we build capacity to ensure that we are safety, and if the worst happens, we can actually get justice?
First of all, this is a collective, we should have collective measures. As we said, first of all, from the hospitals, we need medical personnel who understands the survivor-based approach, not any medical personnel. And also, when you talk about the survivor-based approach, many survivors have walked away from our facilities because of the treatment around there. I've been to a hospital where I've taken a survivor, and she's put in a casualty where the next person is a man. The next bed is a man who maybe had an accident or whatever. She's been interviewed, right? Yeah, where there's no privacy, and so many survivors have felt very discriminated. So the first capacity that we're supposed to build is to have the survivor-based approach, survivor-centered approach in order to tackle GBV. Non-discrimination is non-negotiable. When I get to a hospital, I need to be entitled to privacy. I don't need somebody to tell me, you should, but why were you in the dark? Why you raped? Couldn't you fight that man? Yes, we have medical personnel who are that careless, and many survivors have shied away from seeking medical attention, which we said is a prop. My cry and my prayer is that we should have very, very, should I say, secretive or confidential spaces in our hospitals and in our police stations. Yes. I've been to police stations where it's only a car window where you are the OB.
I know I've been at an OB. You actually state your name and what your issue is right there in the open. And that has not changed even with the reforms.
Yes.
So it has changed on paper because we just passed a few laws that have made, sexual violence, especially on minors, actually tighter. But the question is it trickling down to the user or mashinani? As you've said, ground is different.
Yes.
They're still reporting through that same window. Yeah, you've lost your phone.
Yes.
Through that same window at the reception at the OB.
Imagine you're a survivor and you go to a police station. I've taken survivor to police stations, and you are at the window. Where Sema? You find a very careless police officer, and you are like, where Sema?
So then, from where we sit, since you've said it's a collective approach, give us 3 points where that needs to have convergence.
We need to bring that. We need to bring that police officer on the table, that medical personnel on the table, and we also need to, even the registrations, we need to bring them on the table. We need to bring these survivors on the table for us to understand the gaps. I could be a survivor. How was I treated? How did the criminal justice system treat me? It's a collective responsibility for everyone. We cannot talk about the hospitals without talking about the courts. We cannot have the courts without talking about the police officers. And mind you, let me tell you, one challenge that women and girls are facing right now is the P3 charges. I know we are going to come there.
Yes, let's get to the P3 charges as we are almost tying this up.
Yes.
Let's talk about the P3 charges.
In Kiambu County, there's a hospital that charged 2,000 and it's official. There's another one that charged 1,500. And let me tell you, not every other woman can afford this kind of money. For you to have a medical document filled by a doctor and stamped by the hospital, for it to go to court and prove that indeed there was a violation, you need to part with 2,000 Kenya shillings. And I have been to police stations where it is the police officers who are changaing because they want to move forward with the matter. I have got this information from many police officers who want to be discreet, and they're telling us...
So that those who have actually commercialized justice along the gender-based violence, value chain in the quest for justice. That's what you say?
Yes, and let me tell you, it's an illegality because there was a landmark ruling in a Nembu court. There was an organization that went to court and sought clarification whether people should pay for P3. And there was a landmark ruling that no person should be charged or should pay for a medical document like a P3. In fact, the underlying word was the P3. The question was the P3. And many county governments are still charging our women and girls.
Are these P3s available on our e-citizen platform?
What is that? It is not the paper. They're not charging the paper. The paper, you can access it anywhere. In fact, you get to a police station, they tell you...
it is the filling of the details.
The doctor filling and signing, certifying that indeed there was a violation, and stamping by the hospital.
You have to part with money.
You have to part with 2,000 Kenya shillings. I think we are on the climax. We as human rights defenders, we are on the climax right now. We cannot changa anymore for this kind of money. Okay. And the whole of next week, me and my team are sitting down. We are petitioning the county government and the Ministry of Health against the P3 charges, because we cannot keep charging our women.
Now let me ask you, since you have worked with those who have gone through this horrendous, crime and they've survived. So if a person is lacking the requisite fee that is being, asked by this medical facility, what happens?
The case is dismissed. The case cannot proceed if you don't have the P3 signed by the medical personnel, because, as I say, the doctor who fills that form is a very, very important prop.
Yes, in this particular value chain.
And even for the prosecution to approve the charges against the perpetrator, there has to be a P3 form filled by a medical and certified. Yes.
So it seems this is a conversation that we clearly need to tackle going forward. Yeah. Maybe next time we're going to have one representing those who are there to serve and protect, and that is our security apparatus, including lawyers, so that we can look at this particular chain as we look for justice at a time when the numbers are escalating when it comes to matters of gender-based violence. My guest tonight has been none other than MARION NJOROGE, who is a human rights activist and executive director at MKE Defenders. We are not done. This is not a conversation that we're done. We are likely to be back to have, so that we can just tighten it up to know where we are and where we're going. Well, that puts a cap on matters this conversation. Thank you for those who have been online. Now I hand you over to my colleague, that is Okumu Bernard, who is coming up in not too long with what is happening in the sporting arena.